The opposition honeymoon is over. This is why. First note, Ruto is getting ahead. Look, across social media, you encounter a deluge of information about Ruto, from texts, news, photos to videos. In fact, positive ones. He is cracking jokes, responding to questions in Kakamega, Homa Bay, State House, Nyeri, and people are loving it. Look, Raila, Ruto, Musalia, Kindiki, Joho, and Wetangula axis can sway and win. And we need a better strategy to counter this. Otherwise, it will be tears. Now, this is why the opposition is losing it. This is just another day with Owen analysis. The opposition is relying on the Gen Z movement and their previous revolt against President Ruto, which is a good thing. But Gen Z have a weakness: low attention span and easily move on, and can easily be influenced with money and aggressive pro-government messaging. Like right now, these are people who protested last year and also this year. During protests, young people lost their lives. But right now, all that appears to have been forgotten. Yes, that is a fact. Relying on a demographic like this without a clear strategy definitely weakens the opposition and also leads to a loss. Gashagua was in government and his record is clear. His utterances and outlandish remarks, disparagement of those who did not vote for Ruto, is something that is public. And now those who are in opposition and now support Ruto can ask boldly now, in your own world and with a clear mind, how would you see Gashagua as a better option? This is a question that makes sense. It is a reasonable question because Gashagua was in power. And honestly, personally, I didn't like him because he used to mention things that you'd wonder for sure, is this Kenya just meant for those who voted for Ruto? And to be honest, Gashagua was a tribal chief while in government and now he's in opposition. Can he for sure be a better option than Ruto? That's a plausible question. And we can debate that. But as far as I know, if you're given Gashagua and Ruto, definitely someone would settle on Ruto. Because even if Ruto has weaknesses, you'd say, at least Ruto. Because Ruto, in this case, is a better option. So the opposition is making a mistake by centering their politics on Gashagua. Now, the Gashagua is now the face of opposition politics. Playing their politics that way weakens the influence of opposition. And people would see them not as a viable alternative, even though Gashagua has consolidated the Mount Kenya region vote, especially in central Kenya. Yeah, he has the numbers, but outside central Kenya, people would ask such plausible questions. He's not a viable option. Right now, there are different factions in opposition. There are those with Natembeya, we have Maraga and his team, we have Okiya Omtatah and his team, we have the Gashagua team. This kind of disunity for sure puts Ruto and his team in a better position. Let's not even argue about it because that is clear. That is common sense. Because when we have Maraga from Kisii wanting, to run for president, and again we have Matiang'i, that is disunity. You go back to Western Kenya, you have Natembeya and Eugene Wamalwa not reading from the same script. That to some extent makes it clear that this is not a united house. And a house that is not united definitely cannot have some strength that can give them victory. There's also poor messaging from the opposition, for sure. Look at how Ruto is running his team. His communication team is organized. It is communicating. It is spreading propaganda, manipulating people online, showing, the programs Ruto is running, the achievements, videos of some roads being constructed here and there. But the opposition here is not even countering that kind of messaging. That means now Ruto is leading in propaganda. Ruto is leading in messaging. Where is the opposition leading? Nowhere. Nowhere at all. So this makes the opposition weaker and weaker. And as we go into 2026 and 2027, if they don't improve, to be honest, the loss will be theirs. Look at e-Citizen. That is a monumental failure. Look at the Auditor General report, a monumental fail again, because the Auditor General reports are highlighting corruption in government, but the opposition is not messaging properly so that Kenyans can understand this. Also, the highest on e-citizen, massive, to be honest. Billions of money being unaccounted for, that is massive. That means the opposition should take charge in communicating to Kenyans about that, breaking it down. Because sometimes when you talk of a million or a billion has been lost, many Kenyans cannot make sense out of that unless there's someone to communicate repeatedly so that they get to understand this and understand that the government for sure is not for us, but for a few, in the sense that the government is allowing people to steal from them. So that kind of messaging, taking charge in that kind of messaging, puts the opposition in a better position. Otherwise, Ruto will be leading the propaganda and winning hearts, even if there's nothing much happening. With all that said, Kenyans appear not to be ready for change. As I mentioned earlier, that for us to have a paradigm shift, people must, number one, change their mindset. Without changing the mindset, it becomes difficult, because it is true that people are suffering. The economy is not doing well, but it begins with how people perceive that and change their mindsets. Because as of now, many Kenyans sort of like sometimes get really complacent. Even if they're getting very, very, very little, they get complacent. I think because of the poverty that is entrenched in this country, where sometimes people fail to speak out. There's something called rational ignorance. I think I talked about it some time back, that with the rational ignorance, sometimes people take a back seat because they feel that nobody will hear their voice. So I feel that Kenyans are in that situation where they don't want to take charge for change. They don't want to take charge so that in 2027 they can elect a government that fights for them. With that, the sitting president, or President Ruto and his team, will have an advantage. Unless the opposition unite and comes up with a better strategy, it will be difficult for them come 2027. This is just another day with Owen Analyst.